Good evening and welcome to the fifth round of Sim Racing Hub International's second GT4 season. We've already travelled around the globe in this first half of the second season of GT4s, but we make the 1 hour trip northwest of Spa-Francorchamps, which was the previous round, to the circuit at Zolder, the former home of the Belgian Grand Prix, built in 1963, as an exciting and intense 4-kilometre racetrack. On 10 separate occasions, it's hosted the Belgian Grand Prix, and it's even hosted the Belgian Motorcycle Grand Prix, with everything from Formula 1 to European NASCAR racing at the intense and challenging circuit. But this evening, it's GT4s on the menu, and as we head into the midpoint of the season, when we elapse 30 minutes, or the halfway point of tonight's race, we will be halfway through the season, and it's already heating up in the championship in both Pro and AM categories. After an exciting race at Spa-Francorchamps, it is very close at the top, but it's Tim Krol that leads the way. But before we take a look at the race ahead, actually, I'm just going to introduce my co-commentator, Steve Proudly. And Steve, last time out at Spa, a very different circuit to what we have tonight at Zolder, but we're expecting plenty more of the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Zolder's a very exciting circuit. It's tight, it's twisty, it's quite difficult to overtake. Easier to defend, I would say, than it is to attack, although pressure, as we always talk about, is key again round here to try and upset that consistency. But I'm sure, as we always see with the SRHI grids, we will see some battles. And yes, as you say, I mean, we've got the AM and the Pro Championships well underway, yeah, we've got the AM table just on the screen there, and we can see Ntafas has got a reasonable lead there with 100 points, Tim.
It's very close at the top indeed, yes. 27 points separates Ntafas from Lee Moseley. It's two Aston Martins at the top of the table. Evan coming off the back of a strong finish at Spa, but back-to-back podiums at Suzuka and a race win in class at Imola see him top the standings. Further down, Danny de Swart, who has missed the last couple of rounds, still holds on to third, with Denise Pope in fourth after a very exciting battle to her second AM podium of the season last time out at a wet but drying Spa-Francorchamps, and then Stefan Arvidsson and Callum Boyd in fifth and sixth. Manuel Willems, Suke Vervat, Rick Lotterman and Ian Thompson rounding out your top 10. And interestingly enough, it's much the same in the pro and overall fight for the championship. Tim Krol leads the way, but by a slender margin of only 25 points over Sem Spenkelink, who was utterly dominant at Spa last time out. Then it's Yanniek Vallenduuk, who seems to be finding form in the BMW M4 GT4. He currently lies third and is the best placed driver without a win in class, but podiums at Suzuka and Imola show that the number 301 car has potential. Then it's Nicolas Malott in fourth. Mikkel Hutman, who was unfortunate to miss out on racing at Spa despite qualifying in second. He has a disconnect before the race got underway. Then it's Alexander Delors in sixth, with Dennis Verkman seventh. Luke Pound, who bounced back from that disappointing a moment where he ran out of fuel on the final lap when he was set for podium at Suzuka, to then score points in seventh at Imola, and then finally get onto the rostrum at Spa last time with a very strong third place, and Patrick Tractor in ninth, and Lewis Clark rounding out the top 10 in the pro category. But tonight, Stephen, like we said, it's a challenging circuit, Zolder, but interestingly enough, there are a couple of overtaking opportunities, but the drivers are going to have to be careful, aren't they? Because the walls are close, and one step too far and you'll find your race ending in the barriers.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is key tonight is qualifying. They need to, the further up the grid you are, the better, because obviously less cars in front of you on a track like this where it is difficult to overtake. Yes, there are a couple of opportunities. There are a couple of opportunities to put people under pressure, force them into errors, make mistakes, things like that. We've got the hairpin, which is a good outbreak, and if you can get the run through the series of corners on the run up to the hairpin and get yourself in a position. Easier said than done, but that is a very good option. The start finish straight into turn 1 can be, but that usually leads into trying to overtake on the inside and then trying to go around the outside in turn 2, 3 and potentially even round to turn 4. You know, you could end up on the outside, but we've seen some real great battles in the past with various races around Zolder that you know, we say it's difficult to overtake, but we do see some great passing, and I'm sure we're going to see that tonight. But as we're talking about qualifying, the guys are on the track, they are setting times, so I think we should switch over to the feed and see who's on top of the timings.
Let's have a look then as we head over to the live cams. Here you can see the order at the moment. The drivers heading out on their first laps. 5 minutes, well, nearly 7 minutes actually have elapsed in the session so far, and it's Mikael Hutman in the number 84 Camaro leading the way over Garland, who's put in a strong performance. Actually, he qualified very well last time out at Spa in the wet in his first appearance in the series, but was unable to finish the race. But like Steve mentioned, qualifying is super important here. It's almost the Monaco of our season here at Sim Racing Hub International's GT4s. It's the most confined and twisty and closed circuit, but like we've mentioned, it does open opportunities for overtaking. You do almost have to have a complicit rival, don't you, Steve? You know, you can make a move happen, but you've got to have someone on, you know, you're going side to side with who agrees that maybe, yes, it's a battle not worth fighting.
Yeah, definitely. It's you know, it's all about weighing up those options and the loss against the gain or the gain against the loss, however you want to look at it. Potentials with things going wrong and things being tight round here. But what is interesting is we've got Walters here in the KTM, which is ahead of the Sem Spenkelink's KTM. So we've got those two KTMs right up at the sharp end, and we know that the KTMs are pretty good round Zolder. They are pretty agile cars. They're good through the corners, quick out the corners. So if those two guys can get to the sharp end, I think personally, very early days to put my neck on the line, but I think we could be seeing at least one, if not two KTMs on the podium tonight.
Well, we've seen how strong Spenkelink has been, but it's that KTM really has come to the front when the rain's come down, hasn't it? And tonight it might be a track that lends itself to Sem and to the KTM, as we see Walters going second by half a tenth. You know, that's how close it is here at Sim Racing Hub International, and with the GT4s, we've seen this all season, that the top 10 are normally separated by a second, and lo and behold, already the top 13 are separated by 1.1 seconds. But on screen at the moment, Frank Hopp in the number 4 Porsche Cayman. He's in 9th place at the moment, 3rd in the AM category, is improving on his time on the run down to the final chicane. Cars will go left and then right and over a little crest and run down towards the start finish line. He takes the curbs nicely. The car doesn't look too unsettled there through the right hander, and as he pulls the car over to the right hand side to cross the line, he does improve. That's a very strong lap indeed from Hopt. He goes up to 4th place with 1/10 now, 1.5 tenths off the current pole position time, which is Mikael Hutman.
Look at Vallenduuk though, he's sneaked in there in between Walters and Hutman with an impressive time as well. So the top 3 all separated by 0.05 of a second. You know, it's so tight. We're looking at Sem Spenkelink at the moment. He currently is around about 2 or 3 tenths up as he comes towards the end of the lap. So hopefully he'll be able to maintain that pace. I know a little earlier on in the lap he was actually 5 tenths up, so he's lost some time. In fact, he's still losing a bit of time now. He's down to only 1/10 to the good, but 1/10 will improve slightly. I don't think it'll take him up the leaderboard unless he can get a good exit there, and he comes across the line, and he does improve to 6th and takes himself to just under 3/10 off that potential pole position. So yeah, they're pushing, they're finding time, The track level is at optimum. It's a reasonable temperature. We've got an air temp of 19 degrees, track temp 26. No wind to worry about. A little bit of cloud, but mainly sunshine, as you can see. So qualifying conditions are pretty good and lend themselves to these guys building up and getting some good laps in, I think. And I think we will see some more improvements as we see Vallenduuk take pole position now with a 36 almost flat, which is half a second quicker than anybody else. That is an impressive lap, isn't it, Tim?
That's very quick indeed from Yannick, and I was going to say in response to that, as soon as Vallenduuk's time went in, you could see the little graphic that indicates the driver's in pit lane, the one next to Mikael Hutland, who was provisionally pole sitter, disappeared. So he's immediately back out on track in an effort to respond to being knocked off top spot. But Spenkelink at the moment, rounding the chicane and the right-hander at the back part of the circuit, then he'll dip over the crest and gather the car over to the left-hand side before braking into the hairpin at turn 8. The car in front, number 75. I think that might be Lee Moseley just getting out of the way. The traffic could be a problem here around Zolder. It's a short circuit. There are nearly 30 cars out on track, but everyone's seeming to be very fair at the moment and spacing themselves out nicely, which is good to see. Very fair, conducting themselves very fairly at the moment are the GT4 drivers, as they have been all season. But as Spenkelink rounds the chicane and goes across the line, he jumps up to second as an improvement from Sem, but he's still 4/10 off pole position. I think that just emphasises how good that lap time was from Yanniek Vallenduuk. These guys are improving, but no one's getting close enough yet. Xander Vale here in the Porsche Cayman, rounding the chicane. He took a lot of grass on the inside. I'm sure that could have cost him some time. He moves over to the right-hand side as if to try and shorten the run to the line. Indeed, set up the next one, and no, he's unable to improve. It was quicker, Stephen. It looks like he invalidated his lap, and there are a couple of opportunities to do that, aren't there here? Mainly, it's the chicanes, isn't it? The chicane out the back of the forest section where the curbs are so flat that it's easy to just get carried away and drift all four wheels over the white line.
Yeah, I mean, while we're talking about the curbs, obviously the Kleiner chicane, the first chicane that they come across, we know that that's very, very aggressive. If you've ever driven the Zolder circuit, it's very easy to turn in maybe slightly too early for that chicane, take too much curb, and before you know it, you've lost all contact with the tarmac, you're flying through the air, and the cars can quite often end up facing the wrong way. So you've got to be very cautious with that chicane. And then, as you rightly say, Tim, they head up the hill, a slight left, and then they're into the Villeneuve chicane, and that one is very, very easy to cut. It is flat, as we can see on the screen there, now perfectly timed as Vale goes through that chicane, and again running wide there, taking all the track. This corner here is hard, flat. If you've got the line right, you can just keep the throttle planted, but that's the area I would say where the most of the track cuts will be picked up, just through the back there, as you said, Tim. It's the easiest part to, shall we say, run wide, be a little bit greedy and excessive with the curbs, and yeah, it will get you track cuts. But I think drive-throughs will be minimal tonight, dare I say. I don't think it's a circuit that you gain a lot of time from cutting too much. The Villeneuve chicane, yes, potentially you can, but I think the drivers are pretty switched on to that, and it'll only be mistakes that are causing them, I think, this evening.
I think this is a circuit, isn't it, that's blessed by not having the modern safety implementations of so many circuits around the world. There aren't those car park acres of runoff to allow drivers to abuse the track limits. And part of the excitement about the circuit here at Zolder is the fact that it's track, it's curb, grass, and then it's the wall. You've got to be on your A game, you've got to be on the line, and you've got to be nailing it every time, because the barriers will be there to bite if you make a mistake. Here's championship leader Tim Krol on your screen at the moment, heading down towards the first corner. He's currently 8th in the standings, 8/10 of pole position, and our championship leader indeed will be carrying ballast. It's not as much as Sem Spenkelink. He's got 40 kilograms of ballast carrying after his victory at Spa, but Tim Krol carrying 20, and that ballast will take effect at a technical circuit like Zolder. And as Tim now rounds the first sector and heads towards the Kleiner chicane, he's got a little bit of traffic in front. That's Denise Pope in the 79 Wild Things Ginetta, and that's a car that, in my opinion, Steve's going to struggle over the curves there at the Kleiner chicane. But some of these cars are very happy to be, smashed across the red and white curbstones. They're very happy to and very willing to accept that. And that's something that you've got to lean to, haven't it? If you know your car's going to struggle, you're slightly more hesitant through those turns, or maybe pick a specific line. But if your car's able to take the curbs, you've got to take every inch of track you can.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you use your car's strengths and you try and work around the weaknesses. Absolutely, if your car will ride the curbs, you will take more curb up until the point of exceeding track limits. You know, so just seeing Krol now just up behind Denise Pope, maybe that's just. He's closed up there, so I think it's going to have cost him some time. Although he's showing us 4/10 up, so he's going to be screaming and really wanting. He's probably going to be benefiting from maybe a bit of slipstream there as he goes into second place. But he's still 4/10 off that time of Vallenduuk. I mean, that time of Vallenduuk in the BMW, that is a pretty impressive time, Tim. And he's taking some not beating, but even catching just to get close to it. Because I mean, you know, 4/10 on this grid, it's mad.
We've said before, you know, how a second can cover sometimes 15 drivers in the SRHI GT4s, so 4/10 is quite a sizable margin. And like you say, props to Yanniek Vallenduuk. That's a brilliant time early on in the session. And looking at the timing screens, he just seems to have generated that lap time through all three sectors. You know, it's not like that the BMW is particularly strong in a straight line section, etc. Although we know it is pretty pacey once the Yannick puts the pedal down. But it's a 10th in the first sector, it's, you know, a 10th in the second sector, it's a little bit more than a 10th in the third sector. It's just consistently quicker than the other drivers around him. But here, Denise Pope looks like she's on a strong lap at the moment in 23rd, so an improvement of maybe 1 or 2 tenths could see her gain a few positions. But as she heads down towards the hairpin at turn 8 and gets the power down nicely, doesn't run over onto the grass and cost herself some traction and time, she heads down towards the final chicane, drops the anchor as late as possible, turns the car in to the left and then right. Ginetta pretty willing to change direction as she heads towards the line and stays left to shorten the run to the line, moves over to the middle of the circuit. And she doesn't improve again. She's still got a sizable amount of time to find to match her best. So maybe Denise just warming up and attempting to go again. Here's Stefan Arvidsson in the 39 Ginetta. He crosses the line as well. Again, unable to improve. So as we head into this, well into this second half of the session now, this half an hour qualifying session, see Arvidsson running wide. So that's that lap time gone. He might head back to pit lane and try again. It is still Yanniek Vallenduuk at the top of the times, followed by the number 84 of Mikkel Hutman, and then it's Garlin in third, a rather stellar lap to put him up to third place. Then it's Krol, Spenkelink, Luke Pound round out the top 6 with Walters, Berkman, Hopp and Vale rounding out the top 10. It's the top 12, Daniel Herkstra, who's the first car over a second back from pole position. So the times are exceptionally close. The driver on screen at the moment will be looking to better his time and jump Herkstra and potentially into the top 10. It's Arjen Lermans in one of our Camaros on the grid this evening. He's rounding the back section of this Zolder circuit, heading in towards the hairpin. Drops the anchor nicely, turns the car in, no signs of understeer, which can sometimes be crippling through that hairpin. It's so tight and a lot more confined than you think when you're arriving at well over 120 miles an hour. As then Lermans drops the anchor again into the Jackie Ixbok, the final chicane. Camaro looking stable and settled as he puts the power down and heads to the line. Let's see where Lermans goes, if he improves or if he'll be going round again. He doesn't improve on that time again. So Steve, we're almost seeing as if drivers have done their best. I'm sure they won't stop trying. At the moment, they're going to need to dig out a little bit more if they want to knock this man off top spot. And as just as I say that, he runs a little bit wide, so this lap time probably lost. But they're really going to have to dig deep if they want to beat Vallenduuk this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Vallenduuk has shown over the season so far that he's a quick driver. And I think as the season goes on, I personally think he's getting quicker in this BMW. And we hear so often when we talk to the drivers in the interviews and we ask them about the tracks and their race and the races that are coming up, they all do talk about these strengths and weaknesses and how some tracks favour different cars. So they really do have to make every single race count, and Vallenduuk is certainly doing that. He's doing the absolute best he can do at the moment to keep that car on provisional pole and give him the best opportunity of getting away this evening and maximising his scoring potential tonight. Just wanted to say a quick hello to Patrick, Aaron and Anthony in the YouTube chat this evening. Sorry, I was looking for your name and Anthony. I knew there was 3 of you in there that have typed up so far. So yeah, good to see you in the chat, and anyone watching, please help support SRHI. Great, fantastic community. If you're liking the streams, obviously just give us a thumbs up. If you don't want to miss any more videos, hit the subscribe, press the notification bell. We really do enjoy the support. We enjoy entertaining you. Myself and Tim do enjoy doing these streams, and it's good to have everybody along. So welcome, and like I say, hit that notification bell and don't miss out on any more.
Well, when this qualifying session is over in just under 9 minutes time, I recommend you dash and get your favourite drink, or maybe a beverage of whatever kind, and a little snack to keep you going, because you won't want to tear your eyes away from the screen. This GT4 season has really provided some thrilling racing, and I'm sure tonight's event at Zolder will do just the same. As we see Vallenduuk rounds the chicane, gets a little bit poppy over the curbs there. That will cost him time, but he's in no need to improve at the moment, with a 3/10 advantage over Mikael Hutman, and no, he doesn't improve again. And here's Andreas Garlin in the number 1 Audi. He's looking very strong, 2/10 up on his time, so that will see him jump ahead of Hutman if he can keep that time. And the Camaro, I believe, might be the car in front of him. No, that's Lerman's, but still not enough to beat Vallenduuk, so he's going to have to try and find a little bit more in this final section. The car turns in nicely into the hairpin, and then the run through the left and right, and this short shoot down to the Jackie X box. Looks in complete control of this car, and he was very strong in qualifying at Spa, but he heads to pit lane, so obviously unhappy with that lap, potentially unhappy with the car. He might head to pit lane and make a minor change to his setup and head back out again with over 7.5 minutes remaining. Mikael Hutman, though, holding on to his Camaro as he heads round through turn 4 on the ragged edge. At the moment, actually decides to pull over and head back to pit lane, not improving on that time, and that's probably just that minor error there through the end of the first sector. Nicholas Malott. Sorry.
So I was going to say, Tim, indeed, he was actually a 10th or 2 up through the first series of corners, but you just saw there when he dropped a wheel onto the gravel. I mean, we're talking about tenths of a second here, so that is all it takes. That one mistake around this complete lap ruins the lap, and your time's gone. And it's. I'm looking down the timing board now. We're seeing some drivers maybe in the green by a tenth, but they're just up and down. There's nobody making any big inroads to their time at the moment. But they're all just searching for that perfect lap. But we just see time after time it is just that one mistake that costs them the time, and it's so frustrating as a driver just to try and hit that perfect lap, as we just see one of the cars there just messing up the chicane a little bit and having to straight line it somewhat. But he's a lot here. Just he's not necessarily he's about back. He's matching his previous best time at the moment, but he's not really looking to improve. And I think at this point, obviously, they are still trying to go as fast as they can, but their minds are going to start turning towards the race now. They're putting the laps in, they're getting the familiarity, they're building up to the rhythm, and it wouldn't surprise me if people like Vallenduuk aren't hitting the track with a bit more fuel on and getting themselves ready for the race. But I see that Spenkelink's moved up to 2nd place now as well.
So Spenkelink improves then to go a little over 2/10 of pole position. So he's got the closest to that Vallenduuk time. Sorry, it's just a little over 2/10. So he has improved, but that's still just the nature of the grid here. There's one driver 2/10 off, then there's 3 drivers 3/10 slower, then there's a couple of drivers 4/10 off, then there's a couple of drivers 6/10 off, and 3 drivers 7/10 off. Before you know it, you're down to 13th place, and you're in the mid pack trying to find space out there on track once the race begins. This is just how close the competitive action is here at SRHI's GT4. It's fantastic to see these guys so close together up and down the field, and indeed throughout the classes. You look at Walters and Garlin in 4th and 5th, they're heading the AM class, and Frank Hopp, Evan Ntafas and Daniel Herkstra down the order in 9th, 11th and 12th. They're doing just a stellar job to get up inside the overall classes. So a really strong showing from everyone so far. Sem, though, looking like he's improving, or potentially going a little bit quicker now as he crosses the line to complete this lap time. Let's see if Sem can get any closer to pole position. No, he can't. He's still, that's 4/10 off. So he's still pushing on, Sem. He is competitive. He does want that pole position, and it might just be enough to help him in the race, because like we said, Steve, limited overtaking opportunities. If you can get out front and avoid the drama, you might be set for the hour race to follow this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just looking at Arvidsson now. He's 3/10 up on his previous best, currently in 26th place. So with 3/10 in the bag, it's not quite enough to move him up the order really, but he could build on this. He's now 6/10 up, and I think 6/10 is pretty much enough to maybe get him into that 25th place, maybe even 24th. But just depends how much more of a lap he can build. He's just coming around the hairpin now, so he's coming into the final section of the lap, the last couple of corners, one more chicane to go. He's 7/10 up, so this is looking good for an improvement for Arvidsson in the Ginetta, which is going to just move him forward 1 or 2 places potentially, although the timings are quite tight there. If he can drag another 10th out of it, he could even jump up Denise Pope potentially into 23rd place.
It goes even quicker than that.
Yeah, 21st, great lap from Arvidsson, just dragged himself up a little bit there, and that's a strong performance from him.
Found time then in the final sector. He's now 1.9 seconds off pole, but crucially ahead of a long string of competitors and drivers in the AM category. So a stellar lap from the driver of the 39 Ginetta. But on screen at the moment, Nicholas Malott in the Porsche. He'll be looking to find that qualifying form that saw him grab 4th place at Suzuka on the grid. But tonight he's battling down the order. He's 13th at the moment in the timings, and looking like he could be set to improve. He needs to find 2/10 at least to take 12th place off Daniel Herkstra's number 66 Aston Martin. So as Malott heads into the final chicane, that's Luke Pound in front, so he shouldn't be inhibited too much by the Aston Martin a couple of car lengths further down the road. And as Malott crosses the line, does he improve? Yes, he does. He jumps up to the top 10, improves his lap by easily 2/10 of a second there to go up to 10th place, but still 7/10 off pole. And Malott is a driver we have seen battling it out for the podium, or at least the top 5 positions. So it again just emphasises how good a job Vallenduuk has done in the first 15 minutes of this session. Now they're into the final 2 minutes, and still no one can get close to that time from the number 301 BMW M4 GT4. But Malott is going to try again, heading down the back straight towards the Kleiner chicane. But here is Mikael Hutman, one of the drivers who is closer to Vallenduuk's time. He's 3/10 off at the moment, but improving on his time as he heads down towards the hairpin. Impressive to be able to get the sizable Camaro stopped there into the tightest corner on the track, and then power away and use what grunt that Camaro has, heading down the chute towards the final corner, the final chicane. Gets the car stopped nicely, uses the curb on the left and then more so on the right. A little bit of a wiggle on the exit, but he gathers it up and heads towards the line. Hutman, could he improve here? No, he doesn't improve again, 1/10.5 off his best time. So still looking for those small margins. This might be his final chance. 2 wheels onto the gravel on the exit of turn 1, and he's put the car off. He's heading back to pit lane. I think that's session done then for Hutman. He's going to settle for 3rd. A number of drivers potentially accepting their fate and their positions that they've got. Vale pushing hard, has just run wide over the curb. That could invalidate his lap time, or at least cost him time, running all 4 wheels over the grass as he heads into the hairpin. And now down this final stretch towards the chicane, he's got 2 corners really to find any more time. heading in, looking in control of the Cayman at the moment. Brakes as late as he dares. Takes as much curb on the inside as he possibly can. And he's a bit more conservative over the right, but still gets a bit of a wiggle on, which sees him move over to the right-hand side of the track a lot earlier than he'd want to. Vale crosses the line. Again, another driver unable to improve. Here's Rick Lotterman down the order in 19th. An improvement of a 10th would see him jump up a position. He crosses the line and he does improve. Goes up to 14th place. A very nice time. That was an improvement of nearly half a second or so. Thomas Walters currently in 4th.
He's currently up a 10th and pushing the KTM. He's taking a lot of curb there. Potentially that, I thought that may have just cost him the track limits there, because he had all 4 wheels over the chicane there. So that's just an example of how far not to go over. We're just coming down to the last few guys. Most drivers, I think, have got their times in now, and they're all pretty much where they are going to be. Tim, I think that's pretty much qualifying over.
See if Luke Pound can improve on this final attempt. He's 7th and he stays 7th, unable to improve. He got close though to bettering his time, the driver of the 166 Aston Martin. But that is the grid set then for tonight's 1 hour race. Yanniek Vallenduuk really untouchable at the top of the timing screens in the qualifying session, but I wonder if anyone can get close to him in the race. And I'm sure that the immediate driver behind him, Sem Spenkelink, who will be starting alongside him on the rolling start, will be trying to get in front of the BMW as soon as possible. Then it's Mikkel Hutman and Wolters who round out the second row. Then it's Garlin and Krol in 5th and 6th. Then Luke Pound in 7th, ahead of Dennis Bergman, Frank Hopp and Malott rounding out your top 10. Then it's Zander Vale, Evan Ntafas, who's our AM Championship leader, in 12th. Then it's Daniel Herkstra, Rick Lotterman, Patrick Tractor in 15th, in the highest place of our Genettas on the grid this evening, with Arjen Lermans in 16th. Then it's Natalie Lee in 17th, with Ian Thompson 18th, Lee Moseley 19th, half in the 97 Porsche, a new racer this evening, in 20th, with Anderson in 21st, Jan Paul Eikelenboom in 22nd, and Arvidsson in 23rd in the Ginetta. And there's plenty of action still to be had, because, Steve, something we haven't discussed yet is the nature of the race ahead. It's 60 minutes, but a mandatory pit stop. And at a track like Spa last time out, there was plenty of track to go around, because at a 7-kilometre circuit, you pit and you're more likely to come out into some free air. But tonight, at a 4-kilometre circuit that's renowned for being pretty claustrophobic at times, if you pit, you're more than likely to come out in some traffic, and potentially cars dropping back behind the leader, getting blue flags. It's going to be a challenge that these drivers are going to have to tackle head on, isn't it? Because the likelihood is they're not going to spend much of this race alone.
Absolutely not. No, I'm just out on the Segway, Tim, just having a peruse through this very, very colourful grid, and we can just see how many cars are on this grid this evening, and it's going to be absolute chaos through the first few corners. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, I just mean these drivers are going to have their wits about them. They're going to have their spatial awareness turned up to the maximum, because we are going to see 2, 3 and maybe even 4 cars wide through some of these corners.
Well, as Steve powers down the middle of the grid at full tilt, I think, on the Sim Sports Solutions Segway, I think we're going to need to get a better motor in this thing, Steve, so you can get to the back of the queue faster, because nearly 30 drivers taking to the grid tonight. 29 GT4 cars are going to be going wheel to wheel, bumper to bumper, door to door around Zolder. And when we are 30 minutes into this race, we will be bang on the halfway point of what has been an exciting season so far. And there's plenty more still to be given. As we go towards the back of the grid, there's Charlotte Robertson on the left-hand side in the bright yellow Ginetta. And then the Audi rounding out the grid. It's great to see so many cars, isn't it, Steve? And so many drivers getting stuck in, because it's competitive, obviously, but beyond that, it's fun, isn't it? Because when you've got so many drivers around you and so many people, you know, you're always going to find a driver that's at your level that you can go wheel to wheel with in a field this size.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's there's always somebody to race, and that's what it's all about. You know, that's what you want to be doing. You're here to race. You're here to have fun. You're here to push the limits and you know, see how far and test yourself. You know, you always want someone to race against, and that's what you've got at this community at SRHI. They've got a fantastic grid of cars with some fantastic drivers, and we are in for some very, very close racing tonight. And as you said earlier, hopefully everybody's got the snacks, got the drinks, and got themselves ready to settle back and watch some fantastic racing, because as the drivers head round now, trying to put some heat into the tyres, get some heat into the brakes, and get ready for those all important green lights to get this racing underway tonight. I am excited, as you can probably tell. I love racing and watching the racing at Zolder. I don't so much like doing the driving, but I love watching it.
It's one of those circuits, isn't it, Stephen, that just gives good racing. You know, we talk, okay, yes, the overtaking opportunities may be limited. Obviously, there is that jeopardy with the barriers being close, with there being less runoff. But this is a circuit where you've got to give everything to get everything, isn't it? And with an hour-long race, you're going to be walking the fine line between you know, the glory and disaster a few more times than you probably would like to. But that's just so thrilling, isn't it? For us watching, obviously it's great, but to be a driver, to be absolutely hammering it around a track like Zolder, there's going to be a few smiles on their faces out there, aren't there?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's for me, racing at Zolder, it is very tight. It's very difficult. It's twisty. It is difficult to race at. It's those first few laps that you get a little bit apprehensive, a little bit tense, a bit anxious. You know, you've got everyone around you. You're putting your trust into everybody 110%. And then once you've got maybe 3-4 laps in and you start to settle down a little bit and you settle into a rhythm, that's when the racing really commences. You take stock of whether you've gained or lost any positions, and you know, you can start then to play out your strategy and race. But the guys are all lining up 2 by 2 now, and hopefully none of these drivers are feeling too anxious, and they're all just going to get ready for these green lights.
So as the grid forms up then, it's 2 rows of, well, 15 cars this evening that roll towards the start line to commence what is the midway point of this Sim Racing Hub International second season of GT4s. It'll be Yanniek Vallenduuk who will lead away from the green light, but Sem Spenkelink's close alongside, and they go green, and Vallenduuk gets a good jump, but he's having to gain already back on Spenkelink as they head into the first corner. He goes up the inside, but understeers slightly out wide. Spenkelink gets the cut back in the KTM, but he'll be on the outside for not only this corner, but the following 2 if he can't get through. The KTM stepping out the back end. He manages to gather it up over the curb slightly, but Spenkelink has got the whole shot, and he's jumped ahead of Vallenduuk as they round the 3rd corner and out towards the Kleiner chicane. It looks like it's been fairly clean behind. No major drama or dust being thrown up anywhere. They're filing down into single file already. Vallenduuk looking to the outside then into the Kleiner chicane. Spenkelink does his best to defend as they hop over the curb and then climb up the hill. But Vallenduuk has got a great run out of the chicane. He ducks right and then left. He's on the outside into the Villeneuve chicane. Opts to drop the anchor slightly early and back out of that one. Plenty of racing still to be had, but behind, Wolters and Hutland are looking ready to strike. So it's KTM leads from BMW, then it's the KTM again of Wolters, then Hutland, Garland, Krol and Pound round out your top 7 with Berkman, Malott and Ntafas. The top 10 as Spenkelink goes in slightly deep into the hairpin, but able to gather it up on the exit. Vallenduuk looking feisty and using the straight line speed we know that BMW possesses on the run down towards the final chicane. Looks to the outside, unable to get the job done there, and just forces Spenkelink onto an awkward line across the curb. And just like that, Steve, a lap's gone already, but it's nice to see a clean start. No major dramas for falling the front runners, at least, as Vallenduuk goes to the inside into turn 1, tries to repay the favour on Spenkelink. Can't quite get the move done. I'm certain, Steve, we're going to see a lot of this for the remaining 58 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. And look at the guys behind battling as well. You know, we've got Hootman and Walters swapping positions there. The KTM down to 4th place, Hootman getting up to 3rd. So this bit of a roadblock that's and a bit cheeky calling it a roadblock when you've got 2 fantastic drivers like Spenkelink and Vallenduuk, but them battling is potentially going to hold these guys up behind, and it's going to keep them all together, which is good for us because it's going to mean overtaking, it's going to mean battling battling, but it's going to be bad for those guys because it's going to be maximum concentration and potentially some forced errors when the pressure's applied, and Vallenduuk is certainly applying that pressure now to Spenkelink. He's really keeping the pressure, but equally behind Vallenduuk, there's not much of a gap between them either, and Walters in the KTM. That's a 4-car battle, and any mistake here at this point, this early in the race, is going to cost dearly in positions. But Spenkelink, he's proved in the past that he can soak up pressure. He's proved in the past that he can drive consistently. And if these guys, if Vallenduuk especially, if he lets Spenkelink get into a rhythm, then that is key for Spenkelink. He will potentially, settle down and maybe start to take control of this race. Although, I think I'm making that sound easier than it's potentially going to be for him.
As we see, the top 7 drivers nose to tail at the front of the order. Then there's a slight gap back to Malott. He's 2 seconds off the back of Luke Pound, but likely that's going to close as these drivers are battling. 2 drivers at the start of that being Lee Moseley and Peter Kayan look like the first 2 drivers to come to any blows. Their lap times in the first lap were significantly slower to the tune of about 6, 7, 10 seconds. So they've lost times. We see Patrick Tractor on the picture-in-picture in the 313 Ginetta. He's looking for a way past Ian Thompson in the Camaro. But just as you say, Stephen, about Vallenduuk getting caught up potentially in battle, and that allowing Spenkelink to drive away at the front of the field, a very quick time through the first sector has allowed Spenkelink to just pull a couple of tenths. And we see Vallenduuk getting all kinds of poppy over the curves there. He's lost even more time. And further back, looks like Garland's made a move on Walters, and he has. So the Audi's now, as he's run off actually, the Audi in the gravel then, and he's going to drop back 2-3 positions behind the Cayman of Krol and the Aston Martin of Pound. So Garland, who was running around in 5th, challenged for 4th, now finds himself in 7th. Such is the close racing here in this GT4 championship, and especially at Zolder. Make a mistake and be prepared to have to pay a ticket, pay a price, and ask nicely to get let back into the racing queue. As we're nearly 5 minutes into this one already, Spenkelink leading the way, 7 tenths, but it looks like a reduced margin. We'll see when they cross the line, that when Spenkelink now, actually the top 3 look like they're starting to just try and drop the battle pack behind. Half a second between Spenkelink and Vallenduuk at the end of lap 3. Then it's Hutman in the red and blue Camaro behind the number 84. There's a gap of 1.6 seconds back to Walters, and Krol and Pound are all separated by a second. Then there's 6 tenths back to Garland, then Malott, Berkman and Ntafas rounding out your top 10. So starting to see, Stephen, that crucially battling with another driver costs you time, as we all knew, but we're seeing that maybe actually just lapping in behind someone like we're seeing with Hutton maybe, and Vallenduuk and Spenkelink, it potentially could help you just gap away from the field, not looking for a move with 54 minutes still to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to cut to a replay though now on that Garland incident, because it built up from this point here where we see Walters make a slight mistake going into the chicane, which opened the door and presented an opportunity to Garland that he had to take. He would have been silly not to try and take it, and then that puts him up alongside Walters now as they head up towards the Villeneuve chicane. But this is just where it just outbrakes itself ever so slightly, and then has to take to the gravel, and it just costs him a few positions there. But he had to try the move, but unfortunately he just got it a little bit wrong on the brakes.
I wonder if he was almost a bit too hesitant, didn't want to turn in there, because the KTM of Walters was still there along the inside and almost at the rear right quarter panel. It looked like potentially a bit of hesitancy with Garland. He didn't get the car turned in enough and just kind of ran out wide, and like you say, broke a bit too late in an effort to beat the KTM to the apex. But at the front, it looks like Vallenduuk is maybe just settling in behind Spenkelink. He couldn't get the move done, actually running slightly wide, so potentially still pushing on, as we see Thompson going side by side with Anderson as they head in towards turn 2. Thompson on the outside, he can almost make a high line work, NASCAR style around this opening sector, but no, he has to drop in behind the Ginetta. These drivers battling for 15th, 16th, and well, there's Patrick Tractor in behind in 17th, then Lee and Eikelenboom in 19th, and then Denise Pope in 20th, and then Half in 21st. They're all close together. These drivers battling from 15th down to outside the top 20. As Thompson throws the Camaro over the curbs, and Pope up the inside there, at least being challenged by Half, having to go defensive on the run into the Kleiner chicane. Here is Thompson though, running in to the Villeneuve chicane. That Camaro will take the curbs far more nicely than the two Ginettas around him. Anderson in front and Tractor behind it. And Tractor again, we've seen how strong he can be in that 313 Ginetta, but that qualifying outside of the top 10 is really going to cost him this evening. He's going to have to make something happen if he wants to climb up the order, as we have seen him done on numerous occasions this season, most notably at Suzuka, where he came from 23rd to finish 9th at the checkered flag. Further down the order, one of those drivers who won't want to remember Suzuka is Luke Pound, who in 6th at the moment is trying to challenge current championship leader Tim Krol for what is 5th place. The Aston Martin looking to the left and right on the run down the first straight, and as we see behind, Malott trying to send one up the inside of Garlin through turns 2 and 3. And looking like he's managed to get the Porsche. No, he's had to fall back in behind the Audi, but still keen to make something happen. As we see in the picture-in-picture, Yanniek Vallenduuk looking to the inside of Sem Spenkelink into the Kleiner chicane. Can't get the job done, has to hop over the curb. Spenkelink ruthless on the brakes there and chopping across the front of the number 301 BMW, slamming the door in Vallenduuk's face. That just shows you that Spenkelink does not want to give away this lead. He doesn't think he can, well, he's not able to disappear up the road, so potentially it's hesitant to the fact that letting a car pass would be very difficult to reclaim that position further down the line, despite the fact that there's 50 minutes still to go. I feel like we've had an entire race already, Steve.
I was just thinking the same, but what is key for Vallenduuk here is obviously if he can keep away from Huttman behind him, he can challenge Spenkelink. It looks like he has got the pace on him, but the little mistakes or the attacks that he's making that Spenkelink's defending, which cost Vallenduuk's time, just push him back towards Huttman. And if Huttman can get onto the back of Vallenduuk and put pressure on him, then that's what will cost him time, and it lets Sem get away. But at the moment, Vallenduuk is managing to keep a 7, 8 tenths sort of gap between himself and Huttman, which is enough for him to focus on Spenkelink in front. And doing that, he's going to be able to put pressure on him, because it does look like he's got the pace on that KTM ahead of him. But yeah, it's going to be a good battle is this one, I think, because I don't think Sem's going to really break away unless anybody makes a mistake. And I mean, obviously round here, especially at the chicane that they are approaching now, it is easy to make a mistake and lose traction, lose direction, and just lose a lot of time. But at the moment, all three of them running very, very close together. This is at the moment a 3-car battle. We're seeing 3 and 4-car battles all the way down the field at the moment. Very, very close, very exciting, as Vallenduuk is really setting himself up. He's really filling the mirrors up on that KTM, and he's putting as much pressure on as he possibly can. He's driving as close as he dare, and he's keeping it all lit, and he's keeping it all lit very much in focus, and putting the pressure on Sem at the moment. Everything it's on Sem. Look, he's having to almost drive defensive, which is going to cost him time, and really he wants to drive his own line and just focus on keeping into that rhythm, because driving defensive, that'll break his rhythm as well, and that will help Vallenduuk to maintain the pressure.
We know Spenkelink is carrying 40 kilos of ballast, so the KTM might already struggle in a straight line on parts of this track compared to the BMW. But just to make matters worse, he's having to carry around an extra 40 kilos. But as they run across the line, Spenkelink really having to go defensive now. Vallenduuk to the outside at turn 1. It's going to be difficult to make that one happen. He tries to file back into line, understeering slightly, just cost him time, and this could, if it doesn't go to plan for Vallenduuk, open the door for Huttman, who is right in behind. It's 3 for the lead really at the moment, and even if Spenkelink was to make a mistake, these two would come flying by and wouldn't pass up on the opportunity, wouldn't need a second invitation to take the lead. We've had our first pit call of this evening. It looks like Patrick Tractor's headed to pit lane, opting potentially, I don't know if he's picked up damage or just to get out of the battle and get out of the traffic and head back out onto track with some clean air and hopefully run some quicker times and jump those once they make their stops. But that's an early pit stop after only 12 minutes of racing. Vallenduuk, though, really is starting to close up on the KTM of Spenkelink. If anything, he's right up in the gearbox of that car as they round the Villeneuve chicane. And really, Steve, we've seen it so many times that it's not about making the pass in almost 9 out of 10 of the situations. You know, it's about actually forcing the other driver into a mistake, just applying that pressure and having the door open for you. But one driver who we know is happy to soak up the pressure is Sem Spenkelink, because at the moment he's not buckling.
Absolutely not. No, he's soaking up the pressure, but Vallenduuk is ever closer. He's always in the slipstream now, and he's looking to go around the outside again. He's just making Sem take different lines. He's putting him under pressure and trying to put him off his line, create an opening as we see him get right alongside there. But Sem driving fantastically well. He's not being flustered from it. And the big gainer from this battle at the moment is Hutman, who I don't think has the pace of these two guys, but he is there. He's watching, he's waiting and watching brief. And if these two make a mistake, any contact, and you've got your race leader there in third place.
Ballsy move from Vallenduuk, trying to go around the outside of the KTM, but he's got a fantastic run down this back stretch towards the Kleiner chicane. He's going to go to the outside there, side by side into the left-right. Spenkelink throws the KTM crossbow over the curbs, and the BMW has to accept that second position is his spot for now as they run into the Villeneuve chicane, and Vallenduuk in a matter of moments has already closed that gap back up again, and it's getting so close between these guys. But interestingly enough, Vallenduuk is attempting to make the pass now. He's stopped just accepting his position and following in behind. He is actively trying to make the move on the race leader in the 76 KTM, running side by side for a number of corners on the opening sector there, and we've seen how strong the BMW is in a straight line, and you can just observe it close up towards the braking zone. And in the braking zone indeed, it just looks like Vallenduuk's got a better run of things on the way into the corner. On the exit though, KTM of Spenkelink's just able to drag away, and this battling though, Steve, is behind, bringing in Walters. It's going to be 4 for the lead. That KTM is looking strong at the moment. Walters doing a 37.7 on that previous lap, 0.2 faster than Spenkelink, and half a second quicker than the driver in front, Michael Hutman. So soon enough, we're going to have 4 drivers fighting for the race lead.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just noticing that myself when we were riding on board with Sem, looking back. Could see Walters ever closer. As Sem and Vallenduuk have just dropped Hutman a little bit. He was obviously in the slipstream earlier, but they seem to have just dropped him that little bit again. He's almost a second back from Vallenduuk, as Vallenduuk just bounces through that chicane once more, but doesn't seem to have lost any timing. In fact, he's actually got a very good run, or a better run than Sem out of it, and he's right back on the gearbox of that KTM now, almost pushing him through the chicane and really applying that pressure. Sem is the master. I mean, at this point it's really early to start talking about pit stops, but Vallenduuk doesn't really want to take too many chances, I don't think. I mean, if he's got the pace, he could potentially try and stay out longer than Sem, and go for the overcut if he's got that the lap time, as we've seen Sem having to defend very, very hard now. The BMW almost gets fully alongside, but Sem has the inside, and a bit of contact there. That's going to send Sem deep into the corner, but he's managed to gather it all up, and no harm, no foul. They're all back in position, but yeah, a little bit of contact. They are trying very, very hard, or Vallenduuk is certainly trying very hard to get a way through, but I don't know, maybe playing a bit of jeopardy with the pit stop strategy might do Vallenduuk more good than trying to risk a move. The moves have got to be so decisive around here. You can't half-heartedly attempt to get past, because the gaps close up so quickly. If you're going to get past, you need to make that move decisive, and you need to get past.
Well, the driver up ahead of these two, there's just an orange KTM that will be just out of shot. That's Patrick Tractor. He headed to pit lane about 10 minutes ago from 15th, 16th kind of position. As we see Vallenduuk going to the outside into the Kleiner chicane, he's going to try again for Spenkelink over the curbs, and actually Vallenduuk comes off worse there over the right-hander. He's lost momentum up over the hill and down towards the Villeneuve chicane. Around the outside goes Hutman. They're side by side on the brakes. Vallenduuk's going to try and hold it around the outside. They'd still go side by side. Hutman gets a bit of a tank slap, and they make a little bit of contact still side by side as they run through the right-hander and up over the crest towards the hairpin at turn 8. And this is just allowing Spenkelink to gap the pair of them. He's now got nearly 2 seconds advantage over the BMW and Camaro on your screen at the moment. But Vallenduuk able to hold on to second place. But a mistake in pushing to make the move opened the door for Hutman, and Vallenduuk was lucky to hold on to that one. But as I was saying, Steve, and your comments about maybe trying to make something different work with the pit strategy, Tractor lost, well, best part of a minute or so by pitting. And if Hutman and Vallenduuk were to dive to pit lane now, they'd come out last in the order and potentially in a little bit of a window behind Stefan Arvidsson, about a 15-second gap there. So they could risk it, but I'm not sure they'll be aware of that gap on track that they could fall into. So it's going to be interesting now to see how they play this pit stop strategy, because they are starting to catch the back end of the field, primarily Tractor, who pitted early in the Ginetta. But as soon as some other drivers potentially opt to make their mandatory stop, this could cause a headache for this top 3, which is now really a top 4 because Walters is right on them. It's going to be such a strategic battle for the drivers up and down the field. And further down the field, in 19th place, is Denise Pope in the Wild Things Racing number 79 Ginetta. She's still exchanging blows with Half in the number 97 Porsche Cayman as they round the Lucien Bianchi box and onto the back straight towards the Kleiner chicane. And behind, they've got Natalie Lee in the number 19 Mercedes in 20th position. So this trio battling down into the final places of the top 20. Pope looking like she came off worse there through the chicane, losing some momentum, but seems to gain it all back on the brakes. And Denise has been driving this Ginetta for a little while now, but it's such a challenging little car, isn't it, Stevie? It's so unique compared to the other GT4s that it doesn't matter what track you're at. You've got to put in everything to extract everything from this car.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the harder cars to drive, I believe, to extract the sort of the full potential out of it, and to really get that maximum, that last few laps, tenths of a second out of your lap times. It's a lovely car to drive. I do enjoy driving it, and it's a very rewarding car to drive. But yeah, to get that extra maybe 10 to 20% of performance out of it, that last 10-20% of performance, it is quite difficult. As we've seen, I'm not sure what happened to Hutman. I've missed it, but he's dropped down the leaderboard somewhat, and he's down to 6th place at the moment, and he's under pressure from Garland, who also made mistakes earlier on in the race.
So Hutman down to 6th then. That releases Walters, and importantly for Vallenduuk, eases the pressure on him. So now they've got to set about trying to chase down race leader Sem Spenkelink, who holds a near 1.7 second advantage over the BMW. Walters will be on the podium if he continues in this position. He's running 3rd. He's 6 or so seconds further back from Vallenduuk. Then there's Malott, Pound. Just in front you can see Malott and Pound actually exchanging dives and ducks and weaves as they head into the hairpin. Hutman now in 6th, likely to have made a mistake at some point around this previous lap that's seen him drop down the order. There's Garland behind, and Evan Ntafas, who's had a great start to this race. He's up to 8th place, is the AM Championship leader, who started 12th, so he's had a consistent and clean start that's seen him gain 4 positions on this opening, well, it seems to have flown by, opening 22 minutes or so. But Walter's looking strong, looking competitive, and looking in control of his KTM and lapping consistently and well. But behind, there's this battle pack which is ready to pounce should the driver of the number 21 KTM make a mistake. Malott, Pound, Hutman and Garland running all nose to tail. And even behind there, that's Ntafas looking ready to pounce.
We've just got a replay, Tim, of what actually happened to Hutman. If I could just switch to that very quickly. Promise won't keep it on here too long, don't want to miss any of that important track action, but looks like there's a little bit of contact here as they just go into that final chicane. Ooh. And he gets turned around by Walters. So yeah, that's unfortunately what happened to Hutman, which is not what we want to see. Accidents do happen, and I'm sure it may get investigated at the end of the race.
Well, I'm sure you'll agree with me, Steve, though, for the 4 races we've had so far, we've had very little incident, haven't we? So it's testament to these drivers how clean the racing has been. That is an anomaly to some extent, isn't it, from the events we've had? But a track like Zolder, that's just one of those almost silly little incidents that just creeps in when you're pushing so hard and trying to close on the driver in front.
Yeah, for sure, that's it. I mean, it is easy to do that. You know, you're going for a braking, you're trying to outbrake, you're trying to get up the inside, and your opponent, maybe doesn't realise quite how far along you are, comes across. Once you're committed, once you're 100% on the brake pedal, you're not going to stop any quicker. You're not going to be able to do an awful lot to get out of the way. So yeah, it is what it is, and yeah, like you say, very, very clean racing within the community, some very, very good racing, some very, very talented drivers, and it's not just all about speed. Like I said earlier, it's about that spatial awareness and the racecraft. There's some fantastic racecraft we've seen out there, and there's some great racing as we see in here with Luke Pound and Hutman now trying to come back through the field and recover from that incident.
Well, it also looks like Tim Krol, our championship leader, has performed some sort of incident along the way as well. He's now dropped down to 10th after running in the top 6 or so. So I wonder what's happened to the driver of the 933 Cayman. Might have had a mistake, or indeed caught up in some action like Hutman and Walters were. But yeah, as Steve alludes to here, Luke Pound pushing on and having his race made difficult now by the Camaro behind of Hutman, who's looking to recover. But these drivers are all matching each other in terms of pace, but a driver going quicker is Vallenduuk, who looks to have dusted himself off from the opening 20 minutes of action and has set a purple lap time on that previous tour of the circuit. He goes a little bit slower this time, but still very pacey, and he's brought that gap down to Spenkelink. So there's plenty of life left in the 301 BMW as a couple of drivers now opt to take their mandatory stop as we close in on the halfway point. Malott and Hutman pitting from inside the top 7 positions, so it'd be interesting to see where they rejoin. That will act as a marker for these front runners as to where they will come out on the track, and that's really going to be crucial. And we've said so many times this evening that track space is at a premium here at Zolder. You'd hate to pit and find yourself locked into a battle that is for position and there's no blue flags to help you out and help you get past those cars in front. But Vallenduuk, Steve, he looks like he's managing to keep things clean now and is actually closing on the back of Spenkelink.
Yeah. Well, we've got a replay of Tim Krol as well here, just to show you what did happen to him, and I believe it was an unforced error really. I think it's just a mistake at this chicane as we're approaching now. A little bit too much curve, as you can see there, and that just throws everything awry and makes contact with the barriers, so hopefully not too much damage. But yeah, no foul play there, just unfortunate contact for Tim, and just that chicane that we talked about. You hit that wrong and you can be facing in the wrong direction quicker than you can say what happened.
Well, it looked like it was a double whammy almost there for Krol, because he took too much of the curb on the left. That unsettled the car, pushed it over to the right, and then he was in a bad position for the right-hand curb. It just seemed that it was a perfect storm for the championship leader, who did make contact with the barrier. So I'm confident he will be carrying some sort of front-end damage that he might be able to get sorted out at the pit stop, but that just costs more time. And I was thinking ahead of this race, Steve, you push so hard to find a couple of tenths out there on track, but it's so easy to lose 1 or 2 seconds in the pit lane just through making a mistake, or having to take damage repairs, as we see Denise Pope firing off into the pit lane behind Zevi half here. But another thing as well is make a mistake on the pit in or pit out, catch yourself speeding, and that's a drive-through. So these pit stops are so crucial to your race result.
Yeah, absolutely, and we talk about it within the different communities all the time about who's practicing the pit stops, because it is so crucial. We're talking about tenths of a second in lap times, but it's surprising how many drivers don't actually practice or practice the pit stops enough. You know, because you can lose not tenths in a pit stop, you can lose 1 or 2 seconds very easily. But we saw Denise Pope just fire it into the pits there. She was very confident of the braking point, and somebody else who's confident of his braking point there is Half as in the Porsche, as he just tried to leave it as late as possible, but just couldn't quite make it on the Mercedes ahead of him, and he's just going to have to regroup and re-attack you know, later on in this lap as he takes 2 big cuts there. I hope he's watching those track limits, because that was certainly 2 big chunks of curb he took there through the Villeneuve chicane.
Drivers will need to be wary of their strikes with race controls. We see Kessel's in 19th at the moment, handed a drive-through, and he hasn't taken his pit stop yet. So that is likely to be through track cuts, as Tim Krol on your screen at the moment going faster than anyone, and then actually Spenkelink topping that time with a 37.0, the fastest lap of the race so far, as we see Pound and Hop head to pit lane. Krol getting past traffic. That's Evan Ntafas, who's pitted from inside the top 10. He was running, but now rejoins well down the order and is caught up in traffic, which are the leaders coming through, so he will be receiving blue flags. It's just going to cost Evan time, though. That's what's going to make this race so difficult, is finding yourself in amongst cars you didn't think you'd be battling with, or cars that are not in your particular race battle, but such is the nature of the circuit and the time you lose making your mandatory stop, that you'll find yourself going wheel to wheel with cars that have got nothing to do with your race, but could be very influential on your race result, as a stream of cars head to pit lane. Pound, Hop and Eikelenboom in the pits, as well as Boyd, Moseley, Thompson and Kessels. A stream of AM class drivers outside the top 15 make their mandatory stops as we close in on the halfway point. Krol looking fast though. Looks like he hasn't lost too much time, as that was Garlin in front as well, heading to pit lane from 4th position. So Krol will move up the order and up into 4th place, which I think he'll feel is where he should be based on his pace and having made that little incident at the Kleiner chicane. Further down the order, Anderson benefiting from those pitting around him. He's now up to 10th after starting outside the top 20 on the grid.
Stop go 30 for Boyd there. Sorry, Tim, to cut across you, but that's speeding in the pit lane usually. So that's a stop go 30. So effectively, he's got to make another pit stop, which is not what you want to do. Unfortunately, Boyd down in 21st place. That's pretty much going to sort of take away any chances he was hoping for a reasonable finish tonight, I would say.
It's going to be a difficult pill to swallow for Boyd. Callum driving so strongly at Spa last, as we see Anderson diving to the inside of Lotterman trying to make the cut back on the red Ginetta as they head in towards turn 2. He's on the outside, sends it in deep, tries to make that high line work and almost does so. They're still side by side through the Canal Bocht and in towards Lucien Bianchi Bocht, but Lotterman out wide over the grass and has to just opt to live to fight another day. Gets the car back on the grey stuff and is now actually being challenged by the other Ginetta behind of Arvidsson. But yeah, it's all starting to shape up here. A number of drivers then choosing to split the race dead in half. But 2 drivers that aren't doing that are the leaders, Sem Spenkelink and Yanniek Vallenduuk. The gap has gone out to nearly 3 seconds between those two. We're now over the halfway mark. 19 laps competed. We see Lotterman running over the curb there, heading round the back part of the circuit in the forest, and they'll thunder over this crest here and towards the hairpin. Krol dives to pit lane, potentially a longer stop for him, picking up damage in the wall. Lotterman goes in deep. I think you were expecting him to run into the back of the Ginetta there, Steve.
I was, mate. Yeah, I actually thought that was game over then, but the Ginetta managed to just turn it into the apex and avoid the contact and the BMW. To be fair to Lotterman, he made no attempt to turn in. In fact, if anything, he stayed out wide. He recognised he wasn't going to make that corner without causing some sort of contact. So good driving again, but yeah, some really, really close racing here. Some good battles, and certainly battling. As we see, Lotterman is just struggling on the brakes. He's just run that very wide. He's going to have to be careful how he rejoins here, because it's very easy to just chuck it very hastily back onto the track. Yeah, he's some good driving, but just seems to be struggling on the brakes, as it were.
Well, he seems to have gone backwards on that previous lap, losing a number of positions. And here, further down the order, Patrick Tractor, who was our first pit lane caller, is behind Charlotte Robertson. In the other Ginetta, these drivers fighting for 17th, 18th spot. Charlotte is well further up the order because she hasn't pitted yet, but well entitled to fight her position. I'm sure Tractor will want to get past as quickly as possible further up the road. Yeah, that was the KTM, I believe, of Walters. So cars in amongst each other, battling for position on track, but also got some lap traffic coming through, or the leaders passing by as well. So a number of cars around you. Drivers will need to be aware of the situation and the race playing out before them. The Tractor just getting a little bit frustrated, potentially, behind the other Ginetta, weaving on his line slightly. Robertson's very aware of the race. At Spa, we saw her let drivers go. She just wants to complete the races, be nice and clean. But again, she's able to defend from Patrick Tractor, who's very much capable of running inside the top 10. So this is fantastic driving from Charlotte in the number 87 Ginetta. Very competent at the moment at keeping her position and fighting hard with the number 313 Ginetta. Although Charlotte runs wide, she has to check up as she tries to rejoin the circuit, and in doing so, Tractor has to slow up, and he's able to swoop around the inside. And that looked like it was just handed to Tractor, really. But great driving from those involved, and particularly the Aston Martin behind of Kessels, not to come in there with a head of steam and cause an incident. So very heads-up driving from the trio here, as we see a few more drivers heading to pit lane. Lermans, Vale and Lotterman opt to take their mandatory stop with 26 minutes or less on the clock at the moment. So we are seeing that the majority of drivers have now made their stop. We're potentially going to start seeing some strategy play out, as we see Yanniek Vallenduuk heads into pit lane.
We're just struggling to find Sem Spenkelink at the moment.
I was going to say,
is he still there?
Just noticed he is in third on the timing screens, and looking at the timing screen to my left, I can't quite make out where the number 76 KTM is. I don't think... Oh, it looks like he's in pit lane as well, actually, just further down pit lane behind Yanniek Vallenduuk. So I'm sure if Spenkelink is still driving, you can see 76 is on the track map in, well, at the start-finish straight. So I wonder if there's been a problem for the KTM. It looks very unfortunate over to the right-hand side of the screen there, Steve. It looks like the KTM wasn't going anywhere. Not sure what's happened to Sem.
Yeah, that was my concern, and apologies to the viewers there as I was trying to find him. But it was obviously breaking news, and it looks like in the chat, Aaron says Sem has had a CPU crash, so he's had a mechanical breakdown this evening, and that's a DNF for Sem. That is so unfortunate, as he was beginning to take control of this race, and as the pit stops, pretty much his main opposition Vallenduuk had headed into the pits. I think Sem was in a strong position really to at least give Vallenduuk a good fight, but if not, bring it home. That's absolutely devastating news for Sem there. Mechanical failure this evening.
That's going to be a tough pill to swallow for Sem Spenkelink. Another issue that's going to really have him scratching his head, because like you say, Steve, the race was starting to go his way with time running out. Vallenduuk was unable to really keep on top of the KTM through that middle section of the race whilst the pit stops were taking place. But crucially now, the pressure is on Vallenduuk. He was out clear. They were ahead of the chasing pack. They had a strong gap back to Walters in the other KTM and the likes of Hutman and Pound and Krol. So really, Vallenduuk now, the weight's on his shoulders. He's got to steer clear of any drama, and he should be able to take victory. Yes, he might feel that it was handed to him, and I'm sure Sem will be ruining that CPU crash, and will feel that the race was his to lose as well. But twists and turns then of this season. We are now in to the second half of the season, and the second half of this race, just under 23 minutes remaining. That's going to hand all the drivers out on track another position, so everyone shuffles up a spot in the order. But it's so difficult, isn't it, Steve, when you've driven so perfectly? Things seem to be going away. We saw Spenkelink defending hard and battling cleanly with Vallenduuk. It sometimes shows that this sim racing career that all these drivers have, it's sometimes about that mental power to just dust things off, come back again at the next race and give it everything.
Yeah, as we see Vallenduuk now just pressuring Anderson, who's the fighting for position, but Anderson has yet to make his pit stop. Vallenduuk will be aware that Sem's obviously not in front of him now and not behind him, so he doesn't have to do anything silly, like you say. He just needs to keep things under control, needs to be sensible, needs to take the opportunity as it presents itself, keep the pressure on Anderson, and just knowing that Anderson's got to make a pit stop, and all of Vallenduuk's closest rivals have all pretty much pitted anyways. There we go, Anderson fires it down the pit lane and releases Vallenduuk now to go about his business and consolidate his lead and just concentrate on consistent driving to bring it home in this first place for potentially a race win tonight.
Well, there's still Walters up the road yet to stop. I believe the gap between the current race leader and the driver who's really race leader once everything pans out is enough to see Vallenduuk leapfrog back into top spot. But it's going to be close because the gap is about 56 seconds, and I believe a pit stop takes around 60 seconds to complete. But that time will be coming down because Walters will have to take less fuel to get to the end of the race. As we see the KTM coming to the pit lane, he hits on the pit limiter, isn't caught speeding. We would have seen a stop go 30 pop up next to his name had he done so, as he trundles down past the starters box there and the fuel boxes further back towards his specific pit position. So the picture you'll see the blue, yellow and red KTM trundling down pit lane, and on screen Vallenduuk in the 301 BMW wringing the neck of that M4 GT4 in an attempt to jump back into the lead as he rounds the hairpin and in towards the final corner.
It looks like Walters made an error on his pit box as well there, as we saw him come to a stop and then the car shuffled forward, which is usually an indication that you've just missed your marker slightly, and the crew have had to shuffle the car forward. And when I was talking earlier about, you can lose a few seconds in the pit stops, that will potentially have cost him 1 or 2 seconds on that pit stop, because the crew will not start work on that car until it is in the right place. So as we see Vallenduuk now go past the pit lane, past pit exit, back into the lead. Walters' car gets dropped back off the jacks and he's now free to make his way out of the pits. Very short drive to the pit lane exit line, and he's back up to full power now, but that's a pretty almighty gap between Vallenduuk now and Walters as Walters comes back out. And in fact, I'm not quite sure, I think Hoopman's gone round past him as well, so he's going to have lost a few positions, Walters, there in the pit stop, and it'll be interesting to see where he does actually shake out now.
Looks like he's lost out to Malott as well, so the Porsche and the Camaro then of Hoopman have both got past Walters. So the KTM driver who looked like he could have been on for a podium, he had that coming together with the Camaro of Hoopman, and now seemingly that pit stop mistake has cost him time as we head into the final third of tonight's race at Zolder. Walters will have to fight back. These are positions now on track. The two cars in front are the two cars he will need to pass if he wants to get on the podium, and that is Nicholas Malott now running in third, and then Hoopman behind a second further back, then Walters 2.2 back, and there's a 2.1 second gap to Luke Pound, and then championship leader Tim Krol seemingly looking like he just needs to get this race finished after that mistake at the Kleiner chicane earlier on, just bag the points and move on to the next round. So these drivers now looking to to round off this race in the best way possible. 18 minutes remaining. Vallenduuk leads from Arvidsson, who's still yet to make his stop, the only driver yet to head to pit lane. But this is a fun battle, isn't it, Steve? For 15th, 16th and 17th, Natalie Lee in the number 19 Mercedes going at it and trying to get past Yanniek Vallenduuk, who's in turn trying to get past Denise Pope. Although these guys are battling down the order, it's still very much a battle, and Denise is doing a fantastic job to keep 2 Mercedes behind. You've got to expect that those cars are going to be slightly quicker in a straight line than the little G55 GT4, which she's managing just to keep these 2 cars behind very cleanly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Mercedes dwarfer and the mirrors will be full, but you know, at the end of the day, she just needs to drive the line, stick to the apexes, and you know, stick to that racing line and make it as hard as she can. Make them go off the line, make them go around her, and that's you know, 90% of defending is taking the racing line. You know, keeping the maximum speed you can, gaining those, you know, doing the fastest laps you can, and make them have to push the boundaries and the limits to try and get past you, because that's when they'll make the mistakes. But it's doing a fantastic job at the moment, but as you can see, those 2 Mercedes are swarming around behind her like wasps. They are looking to try and send a hot potato down the inside somewhere.
There we go. If you're playing along at home and you've got your Steve Badley bingo card, that's cross off hot potato tonight. As we see Lee getting all over the curb on the exit of the Lucien Bianchi box, cutting towards the outside of Yanniek Vallenduuk on the way into the Kleiner chicane. Can she go around the outside? She does. Hops over the curb. Wonder if she might give the position back. No. She was out of fair game. And they went side by side. Didn't make contact, which was crucial. So nice clean racing between the 2 Mercedes, but that's just allowed Pope a little bit more breathing space. She's able to push on and take the racing line and apex and not worry about the cars behind. But here's this battle for 2nd and 3rd. Malott looking like he's having to start defending from Hutman behind, who's really had to fight back in this race from that mistake and collision with Walters.
But look who's not far back as well. You know, I mean, we're talking about battles. We've got Hutman, Walters sort of in the distance, about 2.7. I think he's losing a little bit of ground. But Luke Pound's not far behind Walters either. He's coming to camera shot, which he wasn't a few laps ago.
So it's all starting to close up. And Steve, really, you know, a track like here at Zolder, make that mistake and you will drop down those positions. You know, if Malott was to just slightly run wide, Hutman would be through and Walters would be trying to get past. It doesn't matter if those gaps are over 2 seconds. Nature of this track is, you know, any mistake is going to be a costly one.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's all about mistakes and you know, not making them basically, or if you're the attacking driver, pressuring the car in front to make them. But we see Hutman there making his own mistakes as he tried to get on the power. You know, he's trying to get the best exit he can out of those corners, and he just overcooked it there and suffered a little bit of understeer, which sent him wide. Lift off the throttle, lose a boatload of time, and yeah, he's not going to be attacking Malott this lap unless Malott makes a mistake. But you know, looking back from Malott at the moment, he's keeping it reasonably tidy, although Hutton was a little bit faster through the last corner than Malott. He's gained a little bit of time, but you know, it's not easy, is it, Tim? I mean, you've got experience, I think, in both these cars, have you?
I have indeed, yeah. I've driven both of them, and they're such different, such different beasts. You know, the Cayman requires quite a specific type. It's very level, as we see. They both bounce over the curbs, and the Camaro, as I was going to say, is no much better at taking the curbs than other GT4s. He's now going to go around the outside, which will become the inside on the way into the Villeneuve chicane, but Hutman unable to get it done. But just to finish off my point there, you know, the Cayman is so good out the turns. It just squats down nicely and powers out of the corner. But that Camaro has significant straight line speed and isn't too bad, you know, on the brakes into the corners. We see, saying that, Hutman running slightly deep, but if he can gather it up, I'm sure he'll continue to close back up.
And look at Walters, you know, I mean, he was 2.7 back. Look at him now. Just from battling, making those little tiniest of errors, costing yourself that little bit of time, which doesn't always seem that much behind the wheel when you make that little mistake. But the guy behind, if he's hitting the perfect apexes, if he's putting his lap times in, he can really take advantage of those mistakes and close the gap up. As we see the KTM of Walters just fall back a little bit as they come down the start-finish straight, Huttman closing back up onto the rear end of Malott, as close as he's ever been for the last couple of laps. So if we can keep it all tidy, we could see another attack into the Kleiner chicane. Not sure if he'll be able to send that car around the outside of the Porsche, because the Porsche is a pretty agile car. As you say, Tim, they are very, very different beasts, and one of the good attributes of the Cayman is its agility.
Is indeed, in a technical track like that, you want agility in bucket loads, but Huttman able to get a better run through the Kleiner chicane. He's on the inside as they crest the hill and down towards the Villeneuve chicane. He's got past. Can he beat Malott on the brakes? Yes, he can. So he's got the move done. That's Huttman up to second place. Malott now has to take third and think about defending from Walters, who's really closed up. As Steve was saying, whilst those two were battling, the KTM is now in amongst it, in the fight for the podium. Walters goes to the inside. Malott has to adjust his line, aware of the fact that KTM was on his inside at his rear quarter panel. Bit of a desperate move, I think, from Walters. It wasn't really on, but he chose to try and send it up the inside. He'll need to be careful because he has been involved in a couple of mistakes. And he runs deep and makes contact with the back of Malott again. It looks like they've had two of their 9 lives taken already, Steve, and like it might just be a move too far if Walters keeps pushing this one in that specific way, just going a bit too deep on the brakes and not being aware of the car in front slowing down. Walters able to cut back, but it's lucky for both of them there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely, and Luke Pound now closing in on the back of them as well. But I think that all comes down to the different attributes and strengths and weaknesses. We see Alf in 20th getting a drive-through in his Porsche. That'll be for track limits. But yeah, the different attributes of the cars. Obviously, the KTM is maybe better on the brakes than the Porsches, and that's allowing Walters to brake deeper. But he's got to remember, if there's a car there, you can't use that car as a bumper. You've got to, maybe just brake that bit earlier. As we see him send it there up around the outside to the inside of the second half. Got that move done very, very cleanly, it has to be said. Both drivers allowed each other just enough room, and yeah, it was a fantastic overtake. That was one of the cleanest, safest overtakes I've seen at that chicane for a long time.
Able to get the car stopped. I'm sure he would have been pushing the brake pedal as hard as possible as the car slowed up into the chicane, and that's dropped Malott now back into the clutches of Pound, who has had a very solid race in 6th. We're wanting to better that position if he can, heading into the final 10 minutes of this one. And all of the battling has allowed Huttman to escape up the road and ease the pressure on the shoulders of the Camaro driver, who is a sizable amount of time off race leader Yanniek Vallenduuk, who now needs to turn his thoughts to making the checkered flag. It's not about being the quickest man out on track. It's about getting to the finish now for the 301 BMW, who holds a 20-second or near 20-second lead at the top of the time sheets. But as we see the trio battling on screen, and the picture-in-picture, you can see Pope, Michael and Boom and Lee still going at it as they round the Villeneuve chicane. This is a great battle that seems to have been going on for the last 20 or so minutes. These three drivers exchanging positions, but crucially, they're all still running. They haven't had any dramas just yet, although there is a Pirelli advertising board lent up against the fence there, so someone's run slightly wide and come a cropper at some point on the run down in towards the hairpin, and running up towards now the Jackie X-Box, the final chicane. Looks like Pope is really trying to... She's having to push on, actually, to keep these two drivers behind, but looking in complete control. The Ginetta's not stepping out of line through the corners. It's not getting squirrely on the exit. Crucially, it's not doing some dreadful understeer or on the brake turning oversteer on the way into corners. Pope looks in control of the number 79 Wild Things Ginetta, which is great to see, and it's going to help her out in terms of battling these cars behind. She's sticking to her line. She's not getting distracted by the cars behind and running defensive, which will cost herself time. She's just got her eyes forward, which I think is going to pay dividends in the final 8 minutes of this race. And Steve, if you're the drivers on the picture, the main picture on screen, and if you're the drivers in picture, one of the hardest things to do is not look at that mirror too much, because you find yourself dropping time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said there, the best piece of advice you can give anybody racing is drive your line. Always drive your line. Defend as a last resort, because as soon as you start defending, you're costing yourself time and you're making it easy for the person behind to stay with you in the first place. So yeah, I mean, we're seeing Denise giving us a perfect example of that, because she's very, very rarely moving away from the racing line at the moment. She's just going a little bit mid-track there, as they're both very close, defending slightly, but most of the time she's driving her line. She's sticking to her braking points, and she's
sorry, Steve, to interrupt you. Sorry, it looks like Luke Pound has come a cropper, had the same mistake that Tim Krol suffered through the Kleiner chicane, bobbling over the curbs. And the driver that was inside the top 5 is now off the track to the right-hand side. So Luke Pound in the number 166 Aston Martin stopped out on track, and it didn't look like he got going again. So I think his race is over. So that's going to be heart-wrenching for the driver of the Aston Martin, who's going to be dropping down the order. Let's see if he is still out on track. No, I don't think he is. I think Pound has headed back to pit lane, and that could be race over. So crisis in the final 7 minutes for Pound, who was looking set to take positions, particularly looking like he was closing up on Malott. As we cut to the replay now, we can see the Aston Martin in behind getting a great run out of the Lucien Bianchi box. Another run down towards the Kleiner chicane. They both hit the brakes. Pound, a little bit better actually than Malott, hits the curb on the left and then the curb on the right, and the car just gets squirrely. And I wonder, Steve, if he might have had a problem there with his hardware, because the car just seems to have speared off to the right. It didn't look out of control or particularly crossed up. I wonder if Luke's had a mechanical issue to some extent there.
Well, that would explain why he's potentially retired as well, because I think he has gone back to the pits. I don't think he's managed to get the car going, like you say, so that would potentially be a hardware issue if he's, like you say, the car didn't look too out of control, but it's unfortunate, and it's another mechanical DNF.
Real shame then for two of our top competitors then out of the race this evening, but that is racing, I suppose, to some extent, isn't it, Steve? You have to take the good and the bad and push on to the next race, and I'm sure that both Sem Spenkelink and Luke Pound, who we just saw stop out on track there, will come back fighting the next race at Zandvoort. But here, the driver who has had to come back fighting in this race itself, Michael Hutman, the number 84 Camaro. He wasn't able to finish the race last time out at Spa. He's now up in second place after a minor incident with the driver who's now alongside him, which is Walters in the 21 at KTM. They're going nearly side by side on the run into turn 1. They've got a driver in front, who I believe is Ntafas, it's Lee Moseley, sorry, but Ntafas is due to serve a drive-through penalty, the AM driver who is down in 12th. Hutman going defensive though on the run through the canal box. He's aware that the KTM is trying to make the pass on the way into Lucien Bianchi box. Walters looking up the inside, almost tapping the back of the Camaro through the right-hander. They run down the straight towards the Kleiner chicane. Looks like Hutman's not gone too defensive, just holding the awkward middle of the road. Walters tries to go in deep and finds the door closed hard in his face there as Hutman takes his line through the chicane. These two battle it out in the opening 15 minutes and are set to battle it out in the final 4 minutes. Walters closing up on the brakes then into the Villeneuve chicane, and you can see the damage on the back of the Camaro that came from those earlier incidents. I'll put money on a couple of those scuffs being dished out in this in the previous exchange between the two drivers. Walters just running a little bit wide on the run in towards the hairpin, but manages to gather up and close the gap up to Hutman immediately as they run into the hairpin. And again, I wonder if Walters is going to apply the same attitude and just send it on Hutman, or whether he's going to think better of it and maybe, having learnt from the lessons earlier, just wait his chance and wait for the door to be open for him as they run across the start-finish line into the final 3.5 minutes. Walters looks to the inside. It's this late one, and they make contact again. Oh, it's very close again. Both drivers lucky to get away with that. Hutman manages to gather up the Camaro that was pushed sideways by the KTM, and Walters is really pushing this one. It's one of those situations, though, Steve, where make a move. It's not your own race that you affect, but it's two of you that could potentially suffer the consequences of a little late race battle.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's allowing Malott to come back at them as well. He's closing up on them now, as we've seen Ntafas with a drive through in 12th place, so unfortunately Ntafas looks like he's exceeded track limits one too many times, but what that will do is promote that battle with the Ginetta and the two Mercedes of Pope and Eckelboom and Lee. That will promote all those guys up one place by the looks of it, as we've seen Ntafas take that drive through now. But yeah, Walters, he's getting very, very aggressive. He's on those brakes. He's very, very keen on those brakes, and he's just giving maybe one or two taps too many to Hutman, and he's just not getting the job done. He needs to get the job done as cleanly as possible. We can see he's carrying so much corner speed that on the exit of the corners he's there. He's right on the tail end, but he just loses out on the out and out speed, and it's just all the moving about he's doing under braking as well. He's got to be very careful as Hutman. As Walters. He's been very, very aggressive at the moment with his driving. He's doing everything he can that's in the textbook and a little bit more. He's adding a few chapters to the driver's manual as we speak, I think, and really, really trying to get the move done. As again, we just see that corner speed of the KTM. It's phenomenal.
Going up the inside then, into turn 2, able to get the car alongside. They make contact again, and there's contact between the right rear and the left front. They nearly spin around. Malott getting distracted almost and getting hustled out wide. Hutman, it looks like both drivers are just moving on the brakes against each other, and it's causing this miscommunication that's seeing them make contact a couple of times. Walters clearly desperate to make the move on the Camaro. Heading into the chicane, a minute to go. Judging by where Vallenduuk is on the track, they will have one more lap. But these guys are really battling it out, and they're both playing the same game of moving in the braking zone. Again, Hutman there, braking offline and moving slightly back onto his line to kind of close the door, and that's leaving Walters having to hit the brake harder and get a little bit crossed up onto those in those braking zones. So they're both playing with fire in this final 30 seconds of the race, battling hard for second and third.
One more lap, Tim. Vallenduuk has just started the final lap with around about 30 seconds on the clock when he crossed the line. So Vallenduuk has started the final lap as leader of this race after 36 laps. As we can see, Walters absolutely glued to the back of that car. He's glued to the back of Hutman. He's pushing. He knows this is his last lap. His pit crew will be telling him you are now on the last lap. He knows he's got to get it done this time. He's got to get it done. He's got to take advantage and use all the attributes of that KTM. But at the moment, it has to be said, Hutman is not making it easy for him. And shoulders are out, elbows are out. They're literally making those cars as wide as they can. And Walters is trying to thread the eye of a needle with that KTM, but he's also got to keep a watching brief on Malott behind him, because this could anything going wrong ahead, and Malott's on the podium.
As we see, they head down this back straight towards the Klein chicane for the final time. Malott looking to the inside in the Cayman, unable to make the move. I suspect he was just attempting to distract Walters in the KTM. They climb the hill and down towards Villeneuve and up away. Almost half a lap ahead is Yanniek Vallenduuk, who's about to take the checkered flag. He runs into the final chicane for the last time. As we see Walters and Hutman making contact on the exit of the Villeneuve chicane, they both gather it up. Live to fight another day. They've only got half a lap to go, but as Vallenduuk takes the checkered flag, he takes victory in round 5 of the season. As we see again more contact, Hutman and Walters both off the track. I'm sure that's going to allow Malott through to gain one position, if not two. Malott goes rallycross style across the grass on the run in towards the final chicane. Walters is on the inside. He looks like he's going to hold off the position as Hutman goes in deep and hits the back of the KTM. And as we see, Malott just skirts round the outside and will cross the line in second place. It looks like Hutman will take third at the line. And then behind, it looks like Tim Krol is going to benefit from all of that to recover to fourth place after being in the barriers early on. Then in behind, it's going to be Garlin. No, Walters crossed the line in fifth. Then Garlin in sixth. Arjen Lermans will take seventh. That looked like, Steve, was that Denise Pope? No, she had taken the checkered flag. I was worried Denise had run out of fuel there on the final lap. Very close between those drivers there at the end. But to round out the top 10 finishers, it was Lermans in seventh, Dennis Werkman in eighth, then Frank Hopp in ninth, and Patrick Tractor, who pitted well within the first 10 minutes of that race, fighting back to 10th place. So a mix of strategies playing out before us there, Steve.
Yeah, just a replay of that final lap with Walters and Hutman, because it was the whole lap, it was all a little bit touchy, elbows out, as we see Walters there, just got the back end out, then the front end just tapped onto the back there, and hopefully we'll get this replay done before the server resets itself. But absolutely fantastic, and really good racing from all of them, but yeah, just maybe a little bit too much contact from these guys tonight.
Yeah, a shame to see after a very close fight between those drivers. And I'm just looking at the YouTube chat to see Luke Pound, who unfortunately dropped out in the final quarter of that race, the driver of the 166 Aston Martin, admitting that he had a game crash, which explains why he mysteriously pulled over to the right-hand side on the exit of the Kleiner chicane there. I'm very unfortunate for Luke, and indeed Sem Spenkelink, who's in the YouTube chat, to say that yes, he had a technical issue as well, PC crash forcing him out of the race. A shame indeed to see two front runners. But speaking of front runners, Steve, we've got to talk about Yanniek Vallenduuk, because he was very fast in qualifying and it took that pole position very convincingly. Then in the race was locked in battle with Sem Spenkelink, looked to be fighting back towards the pit stops, but then did exactly what he needed to do. Once Spenkelink had that issue, he just made sure that he finished the race and just ticked off the laps, didn't he? And a deserved race win, although I'm sure he would have liked to have fought it out with Sem.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all the drivers want to battle. It's where when you say you've had the most fun, you have a good race, and we know that those guys can battle, and they can battle very, very hard and very clean, very fair. And yeah, absolutely gutted for Sem that he's had that disconnect. But these things happen, and there's nothing at all you can do about it realistically. I'm sure if it's a PC issue and if it's a recurring issue, Sem will be stripping parts. He'll be diagnosing things, he'll be testing things, he'll be trying to find the cause of his issues, but for this evening there's absolutely nothing he can do. It's all what would have been. But Vallenduuk, drove an absolutely fantastic race. He put it on pole position, but he unfortunately lost out to Sem at the start. Sem did what he needed to do at that point, which was get ahead, and then they dropped Hutman for a while, but then Hutman came back, and he was always a fly in the ointment, was Hutman, I think, in Vallenduuk's first half of the race. He kept putting him under pressure every now and again. Every time Vallenduuk made a mistake, Hutman was there to put pressure on him. But then when they, were just coming up to the pit stops, that's when Sem had his failure. He disconnected, or had to switch off, and Vallenduuk from that point on just did what he had to do. He drove a fantastic race, very well measured. We saw him coming up against he was racing for position with a couple of cars that hadn't made pit stops. He didn't do anything foolish, didn't do anything too rash. He just, brought it home and did what he needed to do, and ended up well over 20 seconds, I believe, in the lead, which is, with a GT4 class, that's a hell of a lead.
Indeed, but over an hour race, we do see those gaps ebb and flow like they did, and we'll speak to a couple of the drivers in a second. They have in fact dropped into the green room. So Steve, why don't we try and grab the drivers now from this evening's event?
Absolutely, let's go down and have a chat with our race finishers this evening.
So we're joined in the broadcast booth by race victor Yanniek Vallenduuk and second place finisher Nicolas Malott. We'll come to our race winner first. Yannick, it was a very close race in the opening half, but before that, a very dominant pole position. It seemed like the drivers couldn't get close to you. Did you just feel that you had the BMW just set up perfectly for Zolder this evening?
Hi guys, thanks. It was flying. I guess the BMW was very strong here. I don't really know how. I wasn't expecting it, but I had a good setup and it worked.
Brilliant. And heading into the race, you were battling hard with Sem in that opening half before the pit stops, and it looked like Sem had enough to match your pace, and then occasionally it looked like you would close the gap. It was a proper battle between you drivers, and unfortunately Sem having a PC crash. But crucially, do you think you have the pace to beat Sem if he carried on racing?
Yeah, it was a great battle. He of course overtook me at the start. I'm not really sure how that happened because he was in front of me even though I had pole. But he got in front and we were very close, I think. But I feel like my pace was just maybe 2/10 quicker per lap average. When I was behind him, I was catching with about that gap per lap. But I'm not sure if I would have gotten in front of him because it was very hard to overtake. I've tried a few times, but it usually backfired. So then I stopped trying.
And of course, looking at the championship standings, obviously you're third in the pro category. A result like this, obviously a win, is going to go a long way in terms of boosting your position. But you've been very consistent over the races so far this season. Are you starting to find that you're really hitting your stride now with the BMW? And do you think that consistency will continue on into the next race at Zandvoort?
Yeah, it's starting to be a bit of a fight in the championship, I think. I do think that the thing is that in the wet the BMW doesn't work as well, but in dry races I can always fight for the podium. So as long as the races keep being dry and the weather keeps getting better, as we are now in spring, I hope I can keep the battle going.
And obviously, another thing we have to take into account is the ballast. Next time out at Zandvoort, you will be carrying 40 kilos based on the result this evening. How do you think that will change your race? Do you have to consider how you treat the tyres differently? Do you have to drive differently when carrying 40 kilos? How does it affect you once you've got that ballast on board?
It will definitely affect you a little bit. I think in a GT4 car it will make you brake a tiny bit earlier. I don't think the tires will be hurt as much by it, but I think, for example, Sem today probably would have been much closer or even on pole had he not had these 40 kilos probably. I think it's about 2-3 tenths, so it will definitely affect the standings with how close the fight is up front.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations on your result, Yannick, and thank you very much for joining us in the broadcast booth.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll go over to our second place finisher, Nicolas Malott. Now, Nicolas, you started 10th, you finished second, but it wasn't an easy run, was it, to the checkered flag? It almost looked like every time the cameras cut to you, you were locked in a battle. How was your race this evening? Not sure Nicolas can hear us, or he's potentially got his microphone muted, but I'll ask him again. Nicolas, if you can hear us, I've just seen you've pressed the button, maybe it'll work this time. The race this evening, how was it for you? It looked like you're involved in plenty of action tonight. Well, that's a shame. I think Nicolas might be having an issue. I'm sure if it does sort itself out, Nicolas, shout and interrupt Steve and myself whilst we chat. But Steve, interesting to hear there from Yannick that he thought actually, he did have the pace on Sem, and we did see that a couple of times. That gap did close up. They were ebbing and flowing, the difference between them. It would have gone down to an exciting finish, but like Yannick said, carrying the ballast make the difference, and next time out it might swing back the other way at Zandvoort.
Yeah, absolutely. Zandvoort, another difficult circuit. It's potentially a little bit, well, there's more opportunities to overtake there, a little bit harder to defend in places. But yeah, I mean, obviously, we'll never know what would have happened in the second half of this race due to Sem's having to disconnect. But you know, I think it would have been mega interesting with the traffic and everything thrown into the mix. It would have been a very interesting battle. But Zandvoort, yeah, I think onwards, upwards, and like you say, with the ballast, it can be a bit of a leveler. We've got the longish start-finish straight at Zandvoort, which favours some of the higher speed cars. It's going to be a great race again at Zandvoort. I mean, these races never disappoint us anyway, do they? The GT4 drivers here at SRHI are amongst some of the best, and you know, like I said earlier, the racecraft, the battling, it's they never give up. That's the main thing I take away from these races, that none of these drivers ever seem to give up. They just push as hard as they can right until that checkered flag. As we saw tonight, the battle for P2 between three cars, even through the last corner, it was just a battle, intense all the way. Track limits almost went out of the window as cars, they had to take evading action, and they just went straight across the chicanes. And you know, it'd be interesting to see if there's any stewards' inquiries regarding the finish tonight.
Well, it looks like our second place finisher, Nicholas, is able to speak to us now. Nicholas, the question I originally asked was, you started 10th, finished second, and it looked like every time the cameras were on you, you were having a battle of some sort. How was your race this evening?
Can you hear me? No? Come on.
I can hear you, Nicholas. It's quite quiet, but I can hear you.
100%, so I'm gonna shout. I don't know how I ended here. Can you hear me?
Just about.
I'm sorry. And my mic has issues.
That's okay. Don't worry, Nicholas. If you could quickly, in a few words, give us your loudest voice and shout your answer. But yeah, how was your race this evening?
Busy. I started 10. I had a couple of fights, and then I don't know how I ended up third or fourth. And then I think the Aston Martin behind me had a disconnect or something, and then I had to defend because I pit early, but then the guys in front of me catch me back, and then I don't know what happened at the last lap. I need to watch the replay because the fight was really hard there.
Well, brilliant. Thank you very much, Nicholas, for persisting in speaking to us this evening. And congratulations on your result.
Thanks.
And you know, Steve, as Nicholas said there, it was a busy race for him. It was a busy event all round for us in the commentary booth as well. But looking forwards towards Zandvoort, another track where track space is at a premium, and indeed the margins are very narrow, because make a mistake and you'll find a barrier there to greet you. It's another track where the racing will be intense and it will be high stakes.
Yeah, absolutely, and there'll be a bit of a slipstreaming battle on that start-finish straight, especially in the opening laps when you've got 30 to 40 cars all powering down there. Again, I said it tonight, we did see cars 3 and 4 wide, but at Zandvoort, definitely down that straight, we're going to see people trying to jink and break the slipstream, and we're going to see people trying even harder to stay in that slipstream and try some outbraking into that very tight first corner hairpin. So it's going to be some good racing. Zandvoort never disappoints, and as much as I love watching the racing round Zolder, but it's not my favourite to drive, Zandvoort I actually like to watch and I like to drive there. I think it's an awesome track.
Then for Steve up here in the commentary booth, but yes, the Zandvoort round taking place on the 11th of May, so a couple of weeks from now, and we head into what is the second half of this season and the run in towards the finale at the Nürburgring on the 6th of July. But this weekend as well, the Sim Racing Hub International Endurance calendar heads into its second race as we go to the Kailami circuit for 8 hours, and you can watch that here on SRHI TV. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel and hit the notification bell to see that race begin on this coming Saturday on the 26th. So, 24th. So another event to look forward to, and not too long before it kicks off again. So thank you very much to everyone joining us in the YouTube chat and for watching along for what was an exciting midway race to mark the halfway point of this Sim Racing Hub International GT4 Season 2. Join us next time on the 11th of May for the 6th round at Zandvoort for what will be another exciting event. From Steve Proudly and myself, Tim Fulbrook, thank you very much for watching, and good night.